Hi, this is Elisabeth Hancock, host of The Great Awakening. So, this week, as promised, we're going to take a look at the Bosnian Pyramids because it was watching the film, The Primordial Code by Margin Poles, that really answered a lot of questions for me and also prompted many more. And that's because of the runes that were found at the Bosnian pyramids. And these are absolutely fascinating. So we'll come back to the Bosnian pyramids in a minute. But first, I want to just talk about these runes. So around 2.5 kilometers away from the main pyramid in Bosnia, a huge network of tunnels complete with intersections, chambers, and lakes were found. And apparently, these tunnels were dug when the pyramid was built around 30,000 years ago. Then, just like Göbekli Tepe, they were completely filled in with dirt later on. Inside these tunnel systems, ceramic blocks in the shapes of eggs, squares, and rectangles have also been found, and some of them appear to even be lids leading to underground waterways that run underneath the tunnel, or maybe even signposts to navigate the huge network of tunnels. After cleaning one of these ceramic shapes, the researcher Sam Osmanagic, who discovered the Bosnian pyramids, and his team discovered 8 ancient rune symbols, which he sent off to 2 professors in the US to be translated. And the message came back as follows: The gate has been closed. We are at a standstill. We will have to defend ourselves and conquer until the cosmic gate is opened again. I mean, what an incredible message. That just makes me think that planet Earth in some way was invaded, something came in from the cosmos, and we then had to stand down, defend ourselves, and conquer. Maybe to keep whatever it was here, maybe to hide the huge number of ancient artifacts that have now been coming to light on our planet. For instance, in Antarctica, there have been many artifacts found, so many that countries are actually squabbling over who has rights to them. So, who has rights to the continent of Antarctica, which is an interesting story in itself. But the gate has been closed. We are at a standstill. This is really telling us that this cosmic gate was closed. There was a war or a fight going on. It feels like we lost the war and they had to wait until the cosmic gate is opened again. So is the cosmic gate maybe opening back up now? We're often said to be connecting back to our galactic neighbors. That's Earth is said to be connecting back to the galaxy. We are now opening back up as we move from 3D to 5D. In my research, I've often stumbled across information which is telling us that space, cosmos, is actually 5D. So in my mind, 3D is our planet, our reality. 5D is space. So is moving from 3D to 5D actually us on this planet moving back into space in the cosmos to connect with who I believe are our ancestors? Many of us have not originated from this planet, and I think that there are many different species of human on this planet. And possibly some of these species have come from another planet, or maybe even inside the Earth. And we are an amalgamation of these different races, different species that we can see around us because we're so varied as a species ourselves. There's even some suggestion that the Indian civilizations actually come from the moon. And in fact, the moon is said to be housing many different species. It is an artificial structure, which we'll look at next week. So in Margin Pole's film, The Primordial Code, he interviews many scientists and researchers, and one of those is Sam Osmanagic, who noticed that a hill in Bosnia was actually a pyramid, and he's been studying it since 2006. He discovered that the pyramid is actually made of artificially created concrete blocks, which luckily contain fossilized leaves that have been radiocarbon dated to around 30,000 years ago, making it the oldest pyramid in the world. Secondly, it's perfectly aligned to the cosmic north, and even more precisely aligned than the Egyptian pyramids, which are slightly off. When I heard this, the first thing that came into my head was maybe this is showing us that the Bosnian pyramids were built after the Earth developed its axis wobble, whereas the Giza pyramids were built before it, again showing how old the Giza pyramids are. And there are many researchers, including Robert Schoch, who believe that the pyramids could easily be 100,000 years old. This takes us back into the Atlantean civilization, which goes back tens of thousands of years ago, which are also said to hold huge amounts of information, but also they are energy generators as well. And when you look at the Bosnian pyramids, they also have the same sort of structure, equipment, if you like, to generate energy in a slightly different way to the Giza pyramid, which we'll come to in a second. So another aspect of the Bosnian pyramid is it contains precise elements of sacred geometry, which aligns to the flower of life, which in turn means it facilitates the movement of energy, because this is what sacred geometry does. So if we think about the sacred geometry within the Bosnian pyramids, we've got the white quartz underneath lining the tunnels. Crystals, we know, are transducers of energy, magnifiers of energy. We've got the sacred geometry, which facilitates the movement of energy. It seems to be a very large energetic structure, which seems to be sort of moving energy. And what Sam Osmajak also noticed is that the pyramids are tapping into the electromagnetic fields, which he has measured as being 28 kilohertz. And Osmajak believes the pyramids operate at the frequency of levitation through the piezoelectric effect, which transforms objects into ultrasound form. And of course, this is sound frequency. Sound can levitate physical matter. This is something which is talked about a lot because we don't know how the pyramids were built. The different monoliths that we see around the world, the sacred sites, the stone structures, even the huge blocks that make up the walls in Peru. No one knows quite how these blocks, these massive blocks, were able to be transported. In some cases, especially sites like Stonehenge and Karnak, they were transported from many miles away. And they just didn't have the technology to be able to transport and lift huge blocks like that, because we would struggle to do that today, and they are supposed to be less advanced than us. Well, I think this is telling us that they're not less advanced than us, and it's also showing or indicating that they had access to some sort of advanced technology. And I think probably the easiest one to think about is sound and the levitation effects of sound. Certainly, Coral Castle in the US is said to have used levitation frequency or sound to lift the blocks, because people used to hear a high-pitched sound at nighttime and used to see him holding like ice cream cones in his hand. And they would never see him building during the day, just at night. And there are many who believe that he also had managed to tap into this levitation frequency to create the Coral Castle. It would also explain how the pyramids, the Giza pyramids, were built as well, because these are massive, massive blocks, and also the huge stone walls in Peru. And interestingly, many of them have little protrusions coming out, which could be seen as the place where they were moved around, that someone was able to grab onto these protrusions, obviously not to be able to lift them because they're just massive, but it could be used to guide them if you had another type of technology that was able to lift them off the ground and move them in some way. Also, physicist Goran Marjanovic discovered a very strong electric field at 28 kilohertz, but without a magnetic component on top of the Bosnian pyramid, which we now can see as scalar waves. He goes on to report that Nikola Tesla used scalar waves instead of electromagnetic waves, and based many of his inventions and scalar energy, including his most famous invention, Wardenclyffe Tower, which also had an operational frequency of 28 kilohertz and was designed as a free energy device to pull in energy from the ether, although that's not what Wikipedia says. After taking measurements of amplitude from different points around, within, and on top of the pyramid, Marjanovac discovered a beam of energy running from the pyramid up into the sky. Marjanovac goes on to say that at different points during the day, the pyramid also changes position and appears to follow the sun. As there are many quantum physicists who already suggest that the sun is a portal, could this mean that the people on our planet were able to connect using this cosmic internet, as Osmanajak calls it, to connect to other galaxies via our sun? So they were sending information through this beam of energy, which is carrying the frequency, the information up into the sky through the sun and sending it through to other galaxies, to other universes, maybe, however you want to view this. And could this be what the runes are talking about? That this is the cosmic internet, the cosmic highway that was closed down, shut down, because something came onto our planet, it invaded, we had to make a stand and try and defend and conquer. We possibly didn't because of looking at the state of the planet now, but that is telling us when this happened, which I think is an incredible snapshot in time. And that's why I love this story about the runes. I think it gives us so much information that is missing from so many other parts of our text. So as I said before, Osmanajak goes on to report that the main Bosnian pyramids and tunnels underneath are filled with quartz crystal, which transforms one source of energy into another form in a way that is similar for all Wi-Fi and computing-based technology today. And in the case of the Bosnian pyramids, they are tapping into the electromagnetic fields, which he measured as being 28 kilohertz. Another aspect of the Bosnian pyramids is, just like the Egyptian pyramids, the pyramids in Bosnia exhibit the golden ratio, which can also be found in the Seven Sisters constellation of the Pleiades, which is an area that is revered by many indigenous groups, from the Lakota, the Cherokee, the Apache tribes of North America, to the Maori tribes of New Zealand, to the Aztecs and Inca of South America, to the Egyptians, Sumerians, and the ancient Greeks and the Japanese, who call it Subaru, and to India and the Australian Aboriginals, who believe that their ancestors came from there. So again, it's linking us to these parts of the cosmos that we can see in our ancient sites. We can see our indigenous tribes talking about these parts of the cosmos, the Pleiades, where so many of our indigenous tribes or cultures believe that we originally came from. And I feel that this is really telling us that our ancestors came from the cosmos. The runes are telling us that something came from the cosmos and we had to shut the planet down in order to defend ourselves. So as I talked about last week when we were talking about Orion and the Nephilim, who are children of the Orion, we know the Nephilim in the Bible as being the product of the Watchers interbreeding with the human females. So the Nephilim, children of Orion, that's telling us that the Watchers came from Orion. So now here we have information telling us that we come from the Pleiades. So again, these just different parts of the cosmos always coming up in our ancient sites, in our ancient stories, in our indigenous stories, showing us again this off-planet link and the fact that possibly many bloodlines on this planet have actually come from other planets themselves and didn't originate here on Earth. The 5 pyramids in Bosnia, called the Temple of the Sun, Moon, Dragon, Love, and Mother Earth, match up to the same golden ratio layout as the Pleiades as well. So again, so many of our ancient structures are a mirror image of what we see in the cosmos, which cannot be an accident. And it also shows that our ancestors must have had knowledge of advanced mathematics to be able to do this and even create these structures in the first place. Again, evidencing advanced technology, advanced information, and an advanced civilization way before we got here. Osmanajik believes that the Bosnian pyramids have multiple uses, but that the primary use was as a communication tool, or, as I said, what he refers to as the cosmic internet. The pyramid acts as both a transmitter of frequency waves, which is information, and as an antenna receiving information. And as I said before, he noticed that at different points during the day, the pyramid also changes position and appears to follow the sun. I think from today's podcast, we can see that there's a huge amount of information to show that the Bosnian pyramids were connected to the cosmos in some way, that this beam of energy running from the pyramids up into the sky, pointing to the sun at various points during the day. The runes talking about the cosmic gateway being closed and seeming to indicate that something came here that they were defending themselves, they had to conquer. They possibly didn't conquer, as so many of our texts have talked about. The rulers of reality, the archons, the Nag Hammadi texts talk about this. These are dated to 2,000 years ago, but probably talk about stories from a much earlier time period than that. We've also got the fact that the Bosnian pyramids are around 30,000 years old. We then have the global flood around 9,700 BC, which is the same flood that was supposed to have sunk Atlantis. It is the period of the Younger Dryas. We can see that there was a global flood at this time. As I talked about last week with the giants, we can see that this global flood is possibly what caused many of these giants to suffer from rapid petrification, which can be caused by a global flood. And we can see so many dots joining up here. I think that this is really what our ancestors are trying to tell us, that something came into our planet possibly around the same time as the global flood. There are also some researchers that talk about the moon coming into our atmosphere around 9,600 BC, which is what caused the massive global flood, the huge tsunamis, tidal waves, which have been recorded in the Tibetan texts as going up to 3 miles high and reaching up to the top of the Himalayas. We have evidence that shells have been found on all the highest mountains around the world, again evidencing that the oceans must have at some point been able to reach these high mountains and deposit shells and sand along them. So we can see that there was a huge catalytic event. Nobody quite knows what this catalytic event was. There are talks of comets coming around this time, but we've had comets coming into our atmosphere and to our planet many, many times over the thousands of years that we've been here. And there are many that believe that as the moon was brought in, which is a spaceship, this caused this huge global catalytic event. And is this maybe when a spaceship came here, and that is when the cosmic highway, cosmic internet was cut off, and Earth had to defend itself because a massive spaceship came into our atmosphere? Who knows? But again, I think it's fascinating what these runes are telling us, because this is such an incredible snapshot in our timeline, in our history. And I think that this is giving us a lot of information, possibly bringing up more questions than we have answers. But it really is, I think, a very important jigsaw puzzle piece in this jigsaw puzzle that we're all trying to create at the moment to understand what happened on our planet, who are we, so that we can figure out where we are going next in this great awakening or time of ascension that we have on our planet. And I think it's worth ending with this concept of if 3D is planet Earth and is 5D space, the cosmos. So moving from 3D to 5D, maybe what this is actually meaning is we are moving from a planet-based existence to a cosmic galactic-based existence. And I suspect that this is what we are doing. This is what this time frame is bringing into our collective consciousness. We are connecting back with our galactic ancestors. And if you like, we are reopening the cosmic highway, the cosmic internet, reopening that cosmic gate that the runes talk about so that we can connect back with our ancestors again. Okay. Well, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode, and thanks for listening. And if you want to connect with me, you can find out more about what I do on my website, which is elisabethhancock.com. Elisabeth spelt with an S, as you know, not a Z. And on there, you can find my books, my podcasts, my blogs, and my group programs, one-to-one programs, and more. And if you're interested in mastering your energy, there's also a free 4-week course on there called Energy Mastery, which will be walking you through how to start mastering your energy in this energetic world that we live in. Okay, take care for now. All right, bye.